Y'all looking refreshed. Somewhat. The floor is yours.
May I have the floor computer, please? Thank you. So tonight we're coming back to you with a revised fiscal year 19 through fiscal 2023 CIP because when we brought this to you on April 12th, the motion to approve failed. Also, since that date, we have received additional information impacting projects, primarily transportation projects in the CIP, and those have been revised in what you're going to see tonight. What's on the screen here is the CIP that was presented to you for approval on April 12th, and all that's showing here obviously are the broad categories. Overall, that 5-year CIP was $375.3 million. The specific revisions that have been made were outlined in your packet and are also summarized here. The general government adjustments that have been made were made to be entirely consistent with the fiscal year 19 budget that's already been approved. And those are removal of the replacement county admin vehicle from fiscal year 19, from fiscal year 19's budget that was actually already replaced in fiscal year 18, so no need to replace that in fiscal year 19. Addition of the purchase of 3 vehicles for the new school resource officers that were approved for fiscal year 19. Those we budgeted initially in the general fund budget. Those actually need to be funded in the capital projects fund budget, which is reflective of the adjustments in the CIP here tonight. We also, as we did in the fiscal year 19 general fund and capital projects budget, we have added to the CIP the grant funded portion of the text to 911 project. And then specific to transportation, we received some additional information from VDOT relative to a couple of projects. VDOT has informed staff that the county will not receive the revenue sharing funding we applied for towards the roundabout at Old Plank Road and at Andorra Drive. Absent a source of matching funding for this project in fiscal year 19, staff is suggesting that we shift the project out by 2 years, picking it up, shifting it out 2 years, and apply for the next round of revenue sharing 2 years from now. That is the soonest that we would be able to apply for additional revenue sharing. Since this action reduces fiscal year 19's debt service, there is a budget adjustment in your packet tonight that reflects that adjustment to debt service, and we will need, if you choose to adopt this CIP, we will also need your separate adoption on that included budget adjustment. And Mr. McLaughlin is aware of this shift in funding, as is the rest of the Transportation Committee. We talked about this at the last Transportation Committee meeting.
Okay, could you review once again for me? I apologize, I'm sure I was there, but we removed the Lansdowne Route 2 right turn lane from fiscal year 2019 for what?
Yes.
Yes. Could you?
Yes. That project was originally in fiscal year 19 and was approved in the budget as fiscal year 19. Originally, if you'll recall, Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg were going to share in intersection improvements there at that intersection. Fredericksburg was going to apply for revenue sharing for their portion of that project. They did not do that. So there is not enough money jointly to make those improvements. Please do recall that the Transportation Committee talked about a regional project being submitted by FAMPO for smart scale funding for improvements in the Route 2 and Route 17 corridor study to include the Lansdowne intersection.
I got to be honest with you. When we did discuss this, I said that Route 2 and Lansdowne could not go out 6, 7, 8 years. There's no way we can keep that road the way it is for and doing smart scale. Again, gentlemen, I know you're all sitting there and everything, but I understood that they didn't go for revenue sharing for City of Fredericksburg.
Correct.
Okay. But I also thought that we were going to do it from FAMPO money or something of that nature is what what you brought up, Tim, is that correct?
Well, I think we discussed the other day that we would move that out to the next year and apply for money through either a regional project or the next round.
But it wasn't going to come under smart scale. It would be the revenue
I think it was
sharing.
part of an overall larger smart scale project that we applied for regionally. It's
Correct.
a joint, we had those multiple options were given to us.
Well, I
by the,
understand that,
yeah.
but, you know, realistically, there are certain projects in this county that can't wait 6, 7, 8 years. That'll help traffic flow and everything. And I thought it was my understanding if we pushed it out from 19, that we'd go after it the next year with either revenue sharing, and we can't, you can't put this project in smart scale. It's not feasible, it's not doable.
But I think it was part of a larger overall project to fix, because that's just the right turn lane onto two.
Understand.
But the larger
But
project would have been a
if
large
the-
scale, yeah.
I understand, but if it's part of the larger scale and it's part of smart scale, that means we're not going to see it funding for 6 to, and completed for 8 years. And that was not my understanding.
If I may,
And I've brought this up a couple times. I've said that this can't go into smart scale.
you did bring this up several times. And the biggest hurdle we have is that property is not located in Spotsylvania County. It is located in the city of Fredericksburg. So that's why we could not apply for funding when we went forward. I had talked with the city of Fredericksburg to try to get them to do revenue share funding, and they wanted to wait for our corridor studies. Our corridor studies are almost completed right now. We've had a wrap-up on the Transportation Committee, and we had proposed to do a joint application with the city of Fredericksburg. The city of Fredericksburg now is working with the corridor studies. They have proposed a application with Smart Scale from Dixon Street that incorporates Lansdowne Road. And from the Transportation Committee meeting, we will pick up where the Lansdowne Road intersection begins into Spotsylvania County, and our project that was approved by the motions by Mr. Skinner and seconded by Mr. Ross at the Transportation Committee was to apply for that as far as we could get close, working towards Benchmark Road. So we will have an application coming forward with Smart Scale this round, not out years, but we do have the ability to work that with the city of Fredericksburg, and they have agreed to make application of Smart Scale this round as well to capture the Lansdowne Road intersection because it is not within Spotsylvania County.
If I could, just to clarify with Doug, the smart scale application that you're speaking of is going to be submitted by Spotsylvania County, correct? Not,
It's two different applications, you're correct.
Okay.
We will have an application that will begin on the other side of Lansdowne Road in Spotsylvania County.
okay.
The beginning, Fredericksburg, city of Fredericksburg is applying for Dixon Street all the way up and including Lansdowne. So they're applying for a separate application as well.
Right. Because I attended the FAMPO meeting last night. FAMPO, we approved the
resolution.
the resolution was approved, the 4 projects, because each group gets 4 projects that we can submit. Our county's gonna get 4 we can submit.
Correct.
Lansdowne Road project was not one of the 4 that was approved by FAMPO. So,
They're regional projects. So our proposal was to go, and that was discussed with FAMPO. We had 5 projects. We have 4 slots. So at the Transportation Committee meeting, we wanted to be prepared to be aggressive and apply for all of our spots. So our goal was, we had 4 spots: Germanna Point Connection, the Harrison Road extension, Route 2 and 17, and then the on-ramp of I-95 at 126. So, and then the 5th one was the Route 208 and Lafayette Boulevard improvements. So we worked on these 5 projects at the Transportation Committee meeting and said, let's go forward with 5 projects. I'm going to work with FAMPO and try to get FAMPO to do a regional project that incorporated with the city of Fredericksburg and see if FAMPO would make that a regional project. FAMPO said, you know what, the city of Fredericksburg is going to go forward with the project. You guys should go forward with the project. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the STAR study project that is exit 126. Still giving us 4, still giving us really 5 because the exit 126. So really, Spotsylvania County has got.
I understand where you come from. I
I
got
don't want to say that out loud in case, you know, but we're still getting all of our applications, and it's still working out that we're moving forward with what was our goal. So yes, the Route 2 and 17 corridor studies we went over last Thursday at the Transportation Committee meeting, and those are where we derived those projects from and nailed those down last week. We'll be coming forward at a later date to the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Skinner.
Okay, Doug, now that you've said all that, when can I expect to see some project work done in the very earliest on Lansdowne Road and Route 2?
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ross.
Well, Gary, first,
excuse me.
but the projects have to come before the board for approval. So you're asking a question, and maybe I'm wrong here, let me know that the board needs to approve as our smart scale projects. I mean, you're asking him to give an answer to something that the board needs to approve
No,
before
I'm
he can
not
even
doing
answer
that
it.
at all, David.
Okay.
I'm not. What I'm asking is, this has gone on long enough. To be honest, we pushed it back, and we use the excuse that Lansdowne Road belongs to Fredericksburg at that point where we need the help. Now, do I have to go over? I'll be happy to go to their board and look at it and say, look, guys, this is serious. This doesn't only affect you, your land, but it affects all the people on Lansdowne Road over in that district. It's been known that it's one of the worst intersections that we've got in this county right now. It backs it up 2 miles. Now, I understand the smart scale that we're talking about, and I accepted that because, you know, from Benchmark Road all the way to Lansdowne Road, we can increase the traffic flow by changing the lanes. It doesn't have to be a 4-lane highway. But at our intersections, we can make the flow go quicker so the backup isn't as long as it is. But right now, I see no future for that intersection. And, you know, all of a sudden it's changed that we're working with FAMPO. There's got to be money out there. It's no more than, what, $1.5 million, $2 million at the very max to fix that intersection. Why can't we get with Fredericksburg, if we have to do it, and go and say, look, why can't we fix this problem? Because that's what partnership is about. And sit in this thing. Right now, Doug, you can't tell me I'll see anything for 8 years under what's planned right now. Is there something I'm missing?
No.
Thank you. And that's wrong. And that's not my understanding after that committee. So never mind. I think we need to do something. If we've got a problem out there, we need to fix it. And we have fixed it in all the areas. We're talking about a roundabout. We're talking about bump outs and everything else. And I support them because they're needed, because of flow of traffic. But this corner is just as important as any one of those other intersection of bump outs or the roundabout, if not maybe more important.
I think.
And I think we need to do
you're
something about it instead of just pushing it down the road.
Any other comments from the board? Discussion? Back in your. Thank you, Doug.
So the other change that was talked about and advocated for, approved by the Transportation Committee, was the third item that's on here, which was to add a roundabout at Old Plank and Chancellor. A proffer exists for a developer to make certain improvements at that intersection already. VDOT has reviewed those improvements and determined that a roundabout would be a better solution than the originally proffered turn lanes. After discussions with the developer, with VDOT, and with the Transportation Committee, Mr. McLaughlin requests that $1 million be added to the CIP in fiscal year 19 to allow for the expansion of the developer's proffered improvements to result in a roundabout at that Old Plank and Chancellor intersection. And then finally, the only adjustments that were made to the schools projects were really just to adjust our CIP to match the final CIP that was adopted by the school board on April 16th. Those were very minor changes and changing in between their CIP categories. But overall, their bottom line for the 5 years remained consistent with what was presented to you in April. So in summary,
Hold on, Bonnie.
Bonnie,
Mr.
just real
Marshall?
quick, basically what we're doing with the roundabouts is the Andor roundabout is not happening. We're pushing it back 2 years, so the money, the $1 million for the roundabout at Old Plank and Chancellor, is that coming from the money that was appropriated for the Andor roundabout?
It is not. The Old Plank Andorra roundabout in fiscal year 19 was $600,000, followed by another $900,000 2 years thereafter. We've picked up that whole project, shifted it out 2 years. So then we remove the $1 million for the right turn lane at Lansdowne onto Route 2, and that $1 million was then plugged into the roundabout at Old Plank and Chancellor.
Okay, thank you.
So based on making only those changes that I just noted, this would be the summarized new CIP. There are very little overall changes. There are none beyond those that I just went through. And so our staff recommendations are two. One is to approve the CIP with the revisions that I just noted. There's a resolution included in your board packet that is consistent with the figures that are here. And then also to approve the budget adjustment that's in your packet that affects the fiscal year 19 budget.
Do you have a motion or more discussion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend a motion and a vote on each of those things. So it would be the CIP and then the second for the budget.
All right. We need a motion to approve the CIP as revised.
Motion to approve the revised CIP.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Trampy.
I offer a perfecting amendment to remove the project of Fire Station 12 and shift the money to the new building for Fire Company 3. And I think, as most of you have heard me say before, our county's not growing geographically. When our response time is not what we'd like, it's not because there's no fire station nearby, it's because the crew at that station is out on another call. So as we grow our population, we're going to need more crews, but we have room in existing fire stations for those crews. I think we should fill the ones we have first before we build more stations which can accommodate more than one crew while only putting one crew in each one. And I think the new building for Company 3 is a higher priority at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chief, I think you have something to say.
Yeah, just to add to that real quick. I would highly agree that as we move forward with some different staffing arrangements, that we should probably look at the replacement of Company 3 before we look at the addition of Company 12. However, I would say that we probably still need to keep Company 12 kind of in the plans, possibly just switching the timelines for those two. Dr. Trampy, your assessment of the space that exists in the current stations is exactly on par. There are additional apparatus, additional spaces that we can provide additional staff for. However, that area of Route 1 does cause some concern for me just for the distances from the existing station. So my only concern is some of the growth that is slated to occur in that immediate area would then exceed our response time goals, even if those units are staffed in the surrounding stations. So I think it still is a need there for that. I think the replacement of Company 3 is a higher priority at this point as we look at the entire system. But I think down the road, we definitely still need to make sure that we plan for filling that kind of hole in between Company 1, 4, 11, and 8, just as Route 1 continues to expand that way.
Thank you, Chief.
Now I'm being tested on how to, any other comment from the board?
I have comments, but I don't know how we work in the motion.
That's what I was going to test
So
myself on.
I'll wait, but I do have comments.
All right. You want to go ahead and make your comments?
Just to clarify, the motion that is before the board is Mr. Trampy's motion, which is to remove Fire Station 12. So now would be the appropriate time to discuss the motion, which is to approve the CIP with the removal of Fire Station 12, and that will either be voted up or down.
My motion would not approve the CIP. It would amend Mr. McLaughlin's motion to make this change. Then we would still have to vote on Mr. McLaughlin's motion to approve the CIP.
It depends on however you phrase it. So you can certainly move to amend it, or you can move to amend and approve as amended. So however you would prefer to do it.
Because I created perfecting amendments, and this is what I had in mind.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think
Mr. Cole.
a cleaner vote would be for Mr. McLaughlin to withdraw his motion and then Dr. Trampy make a motion to amend the comprehensive or the CIP. And then you could approve the amended CIP.
We can do it either way, apparently, but if you like, that perfecting does have a good ring to it, so if we want to keep that and just vote twice, that's fine with me.
I think we have to vote twice either way.
All right, let's vote, we'll vote twice. Mr. Jakubowski, you have a comment?
I have a comment on the revised CIP.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The revised CIP that's put before us with the transportation component, I still will refuse to support. The voters of this county, the voters of my district, the majority of the voters in this county voted for a bond referendum with specific projects that were listed in there, and these are not in there. These are millions of dollars that are jumping ahead, taking up debt space, taking up time, energy. Mr. Skinner said it very well. Lansdowne Road is a priority that we had identified. Now, if you want to continue to sit there and throw millions of dollars and more millions of dollars onto our debt load without any way to pay for it, as I will remind the board that we have roughly $2.6 million in transportation debt that's coming due in about 4 budget cycles with no way to pay for that, except to keep throwing more on top. The voters said that they wanted these projects done, and to put things ahead of it is absolutely wrong. I refuse to support it, and I will not support it.
Any other comment? Seeing none? All right, we're going to test my skills here. We have a perfected amendment by Dr. Trampy to take out Station 12 tentatively, add Station 3. So we'll vote on that first. We're doing
Let me
the,
just make sure I understand. Dr. Trampy, are you
we're just
Are you
removing it.
asking to remove Company 12 or simply switching the order of them?
For FY 2019, shifting the Station 12 money to Station 3.
And then for the out years?
If the chief thinks switching the order is the way to go, then I will change my
would-
motion to do that.
That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Skinner.
And Bonnie, so under this motion, we are going to accept the CIP. Is this it? Part of this? No. Is that the next motion? Okay, so this is a motion just to add what Dr. Trampy said.
To switch the two, the
Just to
order of the
switch the
two
two
stations.
Thank you. Okay, understand. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Again, we have an affecting amendment by Dr. Trampy. We're switching Station 12 and 3, basically. So 3 is going to be the priority. 12 will be in the out years. Mr. Jakubowski.
No.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
And chair's aye. All right, now we have a motion by Mr. McLaughlin to approve the revised CIP as presented by Bonnie. Mr. Jakubowski.
I do have a question.
All right, go ahead.
One item that I forgot to ask of staff was, the proffer that was given to us was for the rezoning that was done of the, Thornburn Farm a few years ago. During that process, that proffer that was given to us, the fix at Chancellor and Old Plank was run by VDOT, correct? Did VDOT approve that? Did they had, we didn't just come up with it on our own. I'm sure we asked VDOT if this was the appropriate way to spend proffered dollars.
I believe that the applicant came forward with the $970,000 improvements as a cash proffer or to add turn lanes. VDOT did agree at that time that those were acceptable. I believe that with conversations and how that has transpired, that the applicant who is developing Thornburn Estates said that, he wouldn't mind putting in a roundabout there if that was a better alternative, and he had worked through VDOT, and VDOT said that would be a much better alternative for traffic movement in that area.
Well, my question is, why is it that we go through a rezoning, we go through proffers, and then it takes a couple years later that we come up with an actual solution? That to me just seems quite ridiculous. This is VDOT with their, apparently they just found out about traffic circles and they're putting them everywhere. And have they done a study? Have they done a study at Andorra Drive? And then my last question is, where is the extra $1 million coming from to go on top of the proffer that we're going to be using to fix that intersection?
Bonnie can answer that question, but yes, there was a study done. And as part of that rezoning, and I don't know the exact year on the top of my head, but it certainly wasn't just last 2 or 3, 4 years. It was several years ago for that rezoning. And they did not move forward with the development. I believe it was other property owners, and then it had changed hands. So that was some time ago, and things develop, and additional traffic does move into the area. So as we know, the more studies we do and we don't act on them, those studies become stagnant, and then they become obsolete. So it does take a different approach and a different mechanism to make sure that we're capturing that backflow of traffic as well as the new traffic.
Wait, are you telling me that we voted on this rezoning several years ago? Because I remember it was 3 years at the most.
There was a proffer amendment that came in to try to eliminate that, and I'm talking off the top of my head.
Okay.
But the rezoning was done under different property owners, and I believe the original attorney was Clark Lemming, and I believe it changed hands, and Chris Stacy bought the property, and I don't know when he purchased the property, but that is when the new proffer amendment came in, but that property was already rezoned. That proffer was already in existence, and he was trying to eliminate that proffer, I believe, because now the new proffer policy, Thornburg Estates is maybe 2 miles from this intersection.
Right.
So a new proffer policy that is, as it exists now is not in direct relation to that intersection. And he thought that maybe he could just eliminate it altogether. And the board said, no, we're not going to move in that direction, I believe. And I'm trying to remember everything off the top of my head.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And then the additional funds that was discussed at the Transportation Committee meeting to cover those additional costs that's being worked with SDI engineers and Virginia Department of Transportation. And that $1 million was transferred from, I think it wasn't quite $1 million.
That $1 million
let Bonnie
would be a new bond issue this summer.
So an additional bond issuance to pay for another project that wasn't in the bond. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. McLaughlin to approve the CIPA as revised.
Please.
All right, Mrs. Skinner.
No, I'm very serious. I mean, look,
What?
I've been on this board 11 years, and I've supported Route 3. It was a shovel-ready project when we first started. We put everything into that side. Now, I have asked this for, I can't tell you how many years that we've worked in trying to get Lansdowne and my understanding was at that last committee meeting, we had support to get this done one way or the other, that we could do it. But right now, it doesn't look like I have any support whatsoever to get this done. I mean, Doug, you told me maybe 8 years if I'm lucky, if I start through the smart scale system now. You know, I got to have support, to be very honest with you. I got to have support. If
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
going to support.
because
over
at the
there.
meeting, Mr. Skinner, and you agreed to support this project and move forward because the project on Lansdowne Road is not in the county. So we can't just buy, we don't have the authority to do that road work in the city of Fredericksburg. And we agreed that I would support the future development once it's available, whether it's a joint project with the city and the county, that I would support that, whether it's next year or the next year, whenever we can line up that project. But I don't think we can execute that project in the city.
We can work with the city to make this happen.
But they're not ready.
Okay?
I agree.
Okay.
But they're not ready to do it this year. I think that was the issue, that they were going to focus
No,
other
the
priorities.
issue was they didn't
All
want
right,
to do
gentlemen,
it.
Yeah.
let's have some
hold
decorum
it.
and have,
I agree, Gary. I support the project, but it's not ready to go in fiscal year 19. And that's what we agreed upon at the transportation meeting, that I would support you in a future time when it's ready.
Well, let me make this clear. Supporting me isn't just staying back until Fredericksburg ready to do it. It's all working with Frederick. You on the FAMPO board and with Fredericksburg could bring this up and do that. I mean, that is your job on the FAMPO to bring this up.
And I agree. That was part of one of the discussions that we'd bring up as a smart scale initiative and any other way that we can do it. But I agree with you, Gary. I'm not arguing with you. I agree.
Well, if you agree with me, how about we do something with FAMPO and put it in front of FAMPO, because this is ridiculous. This is a safety issue, and if they don't want to stand up for it, then let's make it an issue with the thing, because I'm willing to come.
All right, Mr. Skinner, I agree. Could we propose that to bring up to the next FAMPO meeting, that we can bring it up to the board and address it and find out if there's a possible way to fund the project?
Okay, I remind you too that this was started out, and the excuse was, well, we can't approve something until we get the study done. And now the study is how old? Going on 2 years? Pretty close to it, Doug? Because it delayed and delayed. Every time we add something to it, we delayed it and had to start all over. So I don't know who we're working with. Because I know in the contract business, if we have to add something to a contract, they don't start all over and do a rebid for it. I don't know how we're doing it out here, but we need to take care of this subject, this problem, and take care of it now, because I do not plan. I will support it because I said I would. But I'm not going to support anything else until I start seeing some action on our roads over on our side of the district.
Any other comments? All right, motion by Mr. McLaughlin to approve the CIP as revised. Mr. Yakubowski.
No.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Chair's aye.